didn't like that.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Thank you for being here and suffering through my tech problems with me. I appreciate that.
It was honestly, I feel a kinship. I'm commiserating.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. So we have your book here. It's all magic. 365 reflections on astrology, tarot, and manifestation. And I run a little coven, and we have chosen to read your book starting in January, but we plan on reading it throughout the whole year. And so they're all very excited. Yeah. And so they had some questions they submitted, but they all wanted to know, it was like very unanimous, and myself included, like what inspired the book? Like, how did you get here?
So, the book was really inspired by, with all of my work, it's so much of it is a response to what I am seeing a need for, and wanting to create something that I feel doesn't exist or doesn't exist in the way that I would have sort of imagined it to. And in this case, I get a lot of questions in my practice around, how do I even begin to establish, how do I start cultivating a spiritual life? What does it look like to bring magic and bring astrology and bring tarot and sort of like spiritual manifestation and wellness into the day to day? And I started to think about how there are so many of these, Christian devotional books that have day-to-day practices, where it's, reflections of excerpts, passages of the Bible, and how cool it is to be able to kind of work with something gradually over the course of an entire year and cultivate a spiritual practice like that. And that for the work that I do in the metaphysical realm, there really wasn't anything like that. So that was where it came from. It came from wanting to create something for spiritual, magical astrologers, witches, curious minds, to be able to cultivate a practice around without it being didactic. This book obviously is the framework for establishing a full year-long practice. It could also be used as an oracle. It could also be used bedside before, you can read as many passages as sort of like a meditation before you fall asleep. So I wanted to really keep it open and keep it adaptable for however people wanted to cultivate a practice, because that flexibility is a huge part of what I believe in.
Yeah, and you are an amazing astrologer, right? I've seen you, like, you've been on so many podcasts, TV shows, YouTube, like you have other books. But I also noticed there's some tarot in here. And there is, like, one of my favorite passages for people that have the book, is page 196, it's 194, and it's all about the death card. And what you say about the death card is something I'm always telling people. You say the death card may seem intimidating. After all, it depicts a skeleton riding on a white horse with a motionless corpse on the ground beneath the animal's hooves. But this card is not about physical death. It's about rebirth, emotional metamorphosis. I read that, I got chills, because that's so beautiful. And for people that are afraid to use tarot or are new to tarot or kind of thinking about it, dabbling, like this passage alone is going to give them like courage, because that card does scare a lot of people.
Yeah, thank you. I love tarot. It's a huge part of my practice as well. It's not something that I share as much publicly. And I don't really know why, to be honest, but it's always been a huge part of my practice. And like all things within my practice, spell work, magic, astrology, tarot, I really want to take the fear out of all of it. I believe that fear has been imposed within it by oppressive patriarchal forces. I don't think that there is ever anything scary or inherently wrong about tapping into your intuition and tapping into the magic of the collective. I think it's a beautiful, empowering thing. So always, for me, it is about removing the fear, taking away the sort of destigmatizing even the scariest cards or even the scariest astrological happenings, and making them things that we can work with in this really practical and beautifully guided way.
Yeah, I saw there was a YouTube video, I think it was from Drew Barrymore, and you were talking about tarot and how you use it more as like a meditation or affirmation. And so that like is definitely reflected in this book because there's so many things people can do with tarot and they don't realize. Like I know a lot of writers who will use tarot cards to come up with character development. It's like, what do the cards say about this character, right? So I would
Right.
love, I love that aspect of it. And so I would love to know like a little more about maybe like, did you use tarot at all to create the book? Did you let it inspire some of the pages?
I did not use tarot in the. Let me think about that.
Okay.
I don't think that I used tarot in. I think I used oracle cards in the process of developing in some of the generative processes of developing the entries. Um, because I think oracle cards are incredibly. I think that that's one of the best functions of oracle cards is that they are so creatively generative. Um, but I did use tarot, of course, when writing the 78 tarot entries. And my approach to that was that I was picking cards and then writing about the cards as they were arriving. And then I put them in, an order that I created for them throughout the book. But the process of selecting the cards was sort of like what does come through, as someone who's been reading for over a decade, what can I share with people as if I was sitting with someone reading their cards? What can I point out that little details around the cards that people may not be aware of, or that offer a different perspective and different insight into what the interpretation of this card is?
Do you have like a go-to couple decks? Like this is my go-to tarot, this is my go-to oracle.
Well, I'm a Waite Smith girly for life. I love the imagery. I feel like I know it like the back of my hand. Whenever I work with a new deck, it always feels like I'm cheating on Rider Waite Smith. Like even the cards reflect that to me, where they're like, "What are you doing here?" I have been working with the Hermetic Tarot recently, because I misplaced my Rider Waite Smith, so I had to pull out some of the some other ones. So I've been working with this deck, but every time I pull a card, it's like, no, go back, go back to the Rider Waite. You know what you're doing there. And then in terms of Oracle, I created an Oracle deck that came out in 2022 called There Are No Coincidences. And that's a 44 card deck. So I love to work with that. I find that deck to be really, even as the creator of it, I really appreciate the sort of messages and the symbolism of it. And then I love, some of my other writer friends at Hay House have come up with amazing decks as well. Rebecca Campbell decks are amazing. I love Marcella Kroll. Sacred Symbols is one of my favorite decks. I think it's like truly a legendary, iconic deck. So yeah, I mean, I'm a big deck person. I love collecting them. I love to sort of explore and experiment with the different imagery and the different interpretations. But when it comes to like reading, I'm Rider Waite Smith all the way.
Yeah, I love that. I have several Rebecca Campbell decks, and I love hearing that you actually use your own deck. I've always wondered that, people that, especially like Rebecca Campbell, she's very prolific. She has a lot of cards, decks. Like Kyle Gray is another big Hay House author with a ton. And I'm like, I wonder if they use them. But it's nice to hear that you do, because it's like it came from your heart. So I would imagine it's got like the best connection to you, right?
Yeah. And I believe that once you put something out into the world, um, I was just talking to my husband a few days ago about the fact that like I will always sort of like when something is almost finished, I'll stall the last few steps of it. Like in the writing, in the creation of this book, they were like, okay, we have everything we need. We just need the acknowledgments page. We just need the dedication. And I'm like, I'll stall those last final bits because when it's all in, it's not really mine anymore, And it's hard to sort of relinquish control and let it just be in the universe and it's not be your little baby anymore. But eventually you have to, you have to send them the acknowledgments. You have to send them the author photo. Like you have to like let it go and be something else. And I do feel like once the book is published or the deck is published, and once it's been created, it really feels like a separate entity from me.
Yeah, and speaking of the dedication, it's dedicated to your daughter, who you were pregnant with and like nursing during the creation of the book. So I was curious because I have kids and I feel that writing a book is very similar to birthing a child. And I feel like I can say that because I've had a child, like I can understand. But like the process is long. There's like laboring, and I swear towards the end of books being done, I have backaches. Like I'm going into like back labor. So I'm just curious, like you've written other things without being pregnant, without being a mother. How is that process different this time?
Yeah, this was a very different process. I mean, this book came to me in more downloads, and it was sort of like I would receive the inspiration or an idea and put it on the page as quickly as I could, um, rather than some other works that were much more. I would go into these like much deeper spaces where I would be sort of, existentially mulling over these concepts for much longer. I would have a concept that I would be sort of like working through as I took walks, as I was driving. With this book, it was like something is coming through, get to the computer, type it out, or voice note even, like get it out as quickly as I possibly could, because it would be gone as soon as, I could potentially lose it if I didn't capture it in that moment. And I do feel like that was very much reminiscent of my experience in being pregnant. It was like it was so present, and it required such an awareness of body, of moment by moment, what is changing, what is shifting. And it was an exercise in being profoundly aware of myself. And I think that that also is reflected in the writing and in the way that the messages were coming through.
So would you say these messages were like channeled? Would you use that term? Is that a term you'd be comfortable with?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I certainly, with not exclusively, the book was not channeled in that it was like all messages were came through in this style. But if I were to look at the book and look at an entry, I could tell you which ones felt channeled and which ones felt in like I intentionally wanted to write about, spell work, or I intentionally wanted to write about Pluto. I could tell the difference between the ones that came through some sort of channeled source and the ones that came through the desire to want to incorporate some of my teaching into the book, if that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. Yeah, and so I wanted to take us back a little bit, and I just wanted to know, like, how did you get here? And that's a big question, so answer it how you feel fit. But you have so much to offer. Like, if someone were to go on your website, I mean, there's classes, there's a community, there's books, there's Oracle deck. You're on podcasts. You were like on Drew Barrymore, and you're young. You're in your 30s, and you're like you've done so many. I would call you like a Jill of all trades spiritually. Like you have so much out there. And so it's like, how did you get there? Like, I know I've seen you talk about manifesting, and I know you teach about manifesting. And so I'm sure that played a part, but like, what an amazing place to be at your age, right? And to have
Thank
like
you.
this.
I don't feel that young, so I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah. I think I'm like 7 years older than you, so you're like my sister's age. So I like, so I feel like, yeah, I feel like the older sister in this
Cool,
situation.
cool, cool. I'll take it. I will take it however I can. And feeling young on TikTok is like, wow, cool. No problem.
Yeah. I mean, no, but I'm like truly blown away that you've been doing this for like about 10 years, right?
Yeah.
And to be like where you are is amazing, especially like as a woman. Like, I know we like to think that like the spiritual industry is different, but it's actually not. So, like, as a woman, as a young woman, and like you're here. So, take us, if you don't mind, just a little bit through that journey. Like, how did you end up here with a new book from Hay House after already publishing other books, after having a deck? Like, how did you get here?
Well, thank you for saying all of that. That really means a lot to me. I I think that I'm definitely someone who has a lot of ideas and a lot of energy and a lot of things that I want to create and bring into the world. And I'm a Capricorn rising, and I'm probably, a workaholic. And I, I have to balance this now a little bit more that I'm a mother too. But I feel like the I guess in a lot of ways, before I was doing this work, I really felt a lot of dread around what I was going to do with all of this energy and all of these creative ideas that I had and all of this like passion. Because especially, 10, 13, 15 years ago, there weren't outlets in the same way that there are now. And I everything felt very small, and I felt very stifled often. And as soon as I finally had the opportunity to really work with the ideas that I had and the creativity and run with it, um, I I really did not look back. I really, really, really just seized every opportunity that I could. I always say that I'm a yes person. Like, I very rarely decline things because you just never know what an opportunity or a conversation or a friendship or something is going to transform into. I think that like having that attitude of saying yes to things and establishing saying yes very early on is is really empowering and really opens a lot of possibilities up. So that is, I guess, the sort of indirect way of being here and having written this book is that I never want to miss an opportunity. I really relish being alive. I relish the opportunity to create and I feel very emotional saying it, but to like to do this work is like such an honor and such a blessing. And I just am grateful to keep doing it.
And we're grateful you're doing it.
Thank you to Yogi 18SF. Thank you for getting It's All Magic. I can't believe the acronym of it is I am. That was completely caught me by surprise. My lovely assistant started a folder, a shared folder of I am, and I was like, I love what you're doing here, but like, what is this? And she was like, oh, these are assets for your book, It's All Magic. And I was like, oh my God, how cool. Thanks, Kat. Thanks. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's yeah, perfect acronym actually. So okay, so were you raised in a way that like astrology, tarot, witchy, was this like an upbringing, like an okay thing in your culture, your household, or was it like, and then you kind of found it on your own?
I grew up with a Sagittarius mom. My mom is a Sag, so she was down for anything and everything. Like in my she had a lot of books, books on Judaism, books on Islam, books on astrology, books on ancient philosophy. All of it was sort of something to discuss and something to explore. She, like anyone who grew up in the 60s, is interested and down with all of these things. It wasn't like the epicenter of our conversations or belief systems or ideologies. It was one of many things that we would talk about. So I certainly have taken that, I took those seeds and I really planted them. I really ran with it. She was not really into tarot. I actually didn't realize that I had never done her tarot. And I'm pointing to the door because she's here. She's been staying with us at our house for the past couple of weeks. I had never done her tarot until pretty recently. And when I approached her and asked her if she wanted me to do it, she was really apprehensive about it. And I was like, oh my God, are you scared? Like, Mom? And I guess she kind of was. She was, and it's wild because I had never even considered that that might be something that she had some, aversion to, because it's been such a part of my practice for so many years now. So it was not something that was taboo by any means, but it certainly wasn't something that we had established cultural norms around, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. My mom's a Leo, and
Oh,
yeah. So when I saw that you're a
what's
Leo
your sign,
sun,
Jenny?
oh, I am a Taurus sun, Gemini moon, which is why I like to talk, and a Cancer rising. So I really love being home.
Oh, I love it.
Like working from
So
home is like the
special.
perfect thing, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so my mom, we had like Linda Goodman sun signs, and then we had a book on fortune telling for fame and popularity from the 30s. My mom, so my daughter's also a Leo sun, and I always say like a queen needs her court because my mother, like, I grew up, all of her friends were gay men. And my daughter in high school is already collecting them. Like, I'm already like, I see you have your court for your queen, like, they're coming. And so one of her, my mom's friends, or one of her friends, his mom gave her this book on fortune telling, and then she had a numerology book, and she would do people's numerology charts. So I
Oh,
grew up,
cool.
yeah. So she wasn't like, she wouldn't have called herself a witch or anything, but she was definitely like, growing up, only knew about sun signs because of Linda Goodman. You know, it was like much later that I'm like, oh, you're rising actually.
He was also a Leo. Linda Goodman was herself a Leo, actually.
Okay. Well, that makes actually a lot of sense because the Leo pages in that book are very flattering. You know, like
Yeah, written for us, by us. Yeah.
like if you read like about the Leo child, it talks about how everybody worships them. I'm like, it's true because everybody worshiped my daughter, but yeah, but she definitely was felt that way. But yeah, so I understand that. It's like growing up, I think though, like in that way, is helpful because I've talked to a lot of people who have come from very strict religious households and then as adults wanting to learn about astrology, tarot, and it's very hard for them. Like it's very hard for them to undo, to put away the shame. And that's, you know, like you said also earlier, it's part of the patriarchy, it's part of society, it's taboo. It's, you know, it's, we should be afraid of women, we should be afraid of women with power, so we should be afraid of witches, right? So it's like all of that. So I think it's great. And so curious, so kind of on that, are you going to raise your daughter like with kind of, you know, some like baby astrology books? I've seen actually, I just saw like a child's like board book. It's like C is for coven, and it's like an alphabetical kind of book for witches.
Oh my God, I love it. Yes, I am. Obviously, like I have to prepare myself for like a really harsh rebellion against it. Um, and you know, she's a Sag, so she's gonna have her she's very smart and she's going to have her own ideas about things, and I'm curious to know how she metabolizes it. But it's an honor. I feel very honored to have a little girl and to teach her how to be a strong woman, and you know what it's going to look like for her to embody her magic and to work with her confidence and her intuition and to believe in herself, you know, above all things, to know that she is capable of doing and creating a world that feels good for her, and that she is empowered by. And if she wants to come and join my astrology practice or my tarot practice or all of the magic and spell work that I do, I would be delighted to bring her into it. And if it's not for her, then we'll find other ways to empower her. But that's what I care most about, is that she feels strong and capable.
Yeah, I had my daughter first and a son later, but with having a daughter, it was very similar for me. It was like I made all the feminist playlists. Like you're gonna know who Patti Smith is. You're gonna know who the Lunatics are. Like you know, we do like so much female empowerment. She had like every rad women's book and like all these great books. And I wanted her to grow up with the sense that like you can do anything, not just like I'm telling you that, but I'm like showing you that through example.
Yeah.
And so I totally understand that. And with her, she can be very like skeptical of a lot of things. So she does like witchcraft on her own, very private, doesn't want to like do it with the rest of like with me or anybody else. But both of my children made it very clear, like, we don't really want you at like career night. Like, we don't want you telling people what you do. Like,
They
don't
said that to you. I've been curious about how she's going to work with that.
Yeah, so like for instance, my son's school they were doing like a teacher appreciation thing, and I was like, I could go do cards for your teachers. Like, it was like people were offering like to bake stuff. There was like a massage therapist. I think of cards as self care. I was like, I'll go do cards and like for whoever wants them on their lunch break and just keep it positive. And my son was like, absolutely not.
So funny.
And he does. I mean, he has like his own cards. He'll pull cards with me. He meditates, but he's like, that's a here. This is a home thing. Like you're not bringing that. And we live in a very like, I'm from New Jersey originally, and then I lived in Southern California. And now I live in like the PNW, and people here are so like open. Like our local grocery store sells crystals and tarot cards. Like, but he was like, no, don't you keep that at home. So
Oh
that
my
was just
gosh,
kind
so
of
cute.
so just kind of my own little experience with that. So speaking of like I'm from New Jersey, I heard you in forget which podcast it was. You talked about that you had been in the punk scene in New York City. And so I was just curious about that because me too. I'm older than you though, so I wasn't probably there at the same time. My big band that I got really close with and saw all the time and still talk to Michael is Degeneration. They're a very like New
Cool.
York City band. And I saw like H2O a bunch of times because we got into the hardcore scene.
I did too.
Less Than Jake because I did like a little bit of ska, Bouncing Souls because being from New Jersey, I'm like I need to see Bouncing Souls. But pretty much every weekend I could be in the city, I would be there and I'd be at some dirty little punk club watching music. So I was curious
That's
about.
so cool.
Yeah, I was curious. It has nothing to do with your book, but I was curious about your kind of background in that. And like, where you kind of went, what shows. And I do actually feel like there's some connection to people that like punk music to later being more like spiritual. Because it's like we already are
Yes.
like, right? Like not into the established thing. So we're going to obviously do our own thing in all aspects of life. So yeah, just curious about your punk connection, your punk background, if you don't mind sharing.
Well, it's interesting you should say that because my mentor, my astrology mentor, was also in the punk scene, and she was just a couple of years older than me, but we met through a fellow punk, and when we were actually in our 20s, so not that far away from it. But yeah, we were all sort of in that same downtown scene. Yeah, I mean, I was so young, like I was really, I could have been anywhere. I still was young enough to have been able to go to CBGBs and go to the Punk Olympics there and smoke cigarettes inside when you were allowed to smoke cigarettes indoors. And I was just reminiscing on this the other day of like, wow, that was really cool to have been able to do. I used to see like leftover crack all the time. I used to go to shows at the Knitting Factory. I used to go to shows really like, in Tompkins, wherever. For me, it was really like the whole scene. It was like following this group around and being part of this little snotty group of anti-establishment kids. But I mean, the truth is that, and in my lore, that eventually I had to split off because I decided that I wanted to like focus on school again, like a big loser. And I did like, so my real punk era was when I was like 13 to 15. And then by the time I was 16, I was like, I got to. Yeah, Bowery Ballroom, definitely. There are so many venues that have closed down that used to be there. And it's like, I used to go to shows at Irving Plaza a lot too. I mean, my favorite was seeing, like at that time, even like at the Continental, of course. I remember a show at the Attics at the Continental was incredible. Bad Brains / Soul Brains. I saw the Buzzcocks. Yeah, there's so many great shows.
I love that. Yeah, I haven't been to New York in a while, and my kids were like, "When we go, like, show us where you go." And I'm like, "They're all gone. Like, my stomping grounds are gone. Like, I just have them in here." My biggest, like, my favorite thing was I got to see Joey and Friends because the Ramones had been broken up by that point. And like, I'm waiting outside. I think it was like 15, just goofy, and I'm just like, Dee Dee Ramone is walking in, like, not in the back. He's just walking the front door, and I'm just like staring, and he winked at me, and I'll take that to my grave. I'm like,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, basically, you were in a relationship.
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so So back to your book, back to here and now. What are some things you have coming up? I think I saw something about a manifesting workshop. Like I said, you do a lot of things, and so I'd love to know like what's coming up for like the end of this year, also for next year. Please share with people your offerings because you have a lot to offer. And it's okay if you don't remember them. I'll try to like link it when I put this on YouTube, so people can check out your website. Your website's beautiful, by the way. Like it's a lot
Thank
of
you.
stuff, but it's not overwhelming. Like you're like, dang, this girl's busy, but you're not like, whoa, you know what I mean?
Thank you. I can't take any credit for it. I have a beautiful designer who works on it with me. But thank you. So tonight, or today is Tuesday. Tomorrow on Wednesday, December 11th at 8 p.m., I have a workshop for the astrology of 2025. That is through my virtual community, which is called the Constellation Club, which I have been maintaining and running since 2019. So a long time now. Next year, it'll be 6 years of the Constellation Club. So that's available in that space. I'm really excited for this look ahead workshop. For anyone who doesn't know yet, the astrology of next year is absolutely bonkers. It is so nuts. It is so intense. And there's a lot to discuss. So I'm really excited to share all of that. I do this workshop annually at the end of every year. And we also pull cards and look at month by month what's coming up and what to expect. So really nice event. And then sort of teasing out for 2025, I'm going to be hosting in-person retreats again. I host in-person retreats, these events called the Lunar Lodge, which are multi-day experiences. And I have one that is going to be in New York, in upstate New York, and then another is going to be in California in an area called Kiama, which is sort of this beautiful inland from Santa Barbara, mountainous desert region. So New York and Kiama Lunar Lodges are coming up in 2025.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
Okay, so you talked a little bit about the astrology of 2025 being crazy. So forever, I wanted to ask you this question. Forever, we've heard about the age of Aquarius, right? And that song came out, I mean, it came out with the movie Hair, the play Hair, which I think is like 60s, 70s. Is that a real thing? Because a lot of people have asked that, and they want to know, like, is the age of Aquarius real? Like, is it happening? Like, what does that even mean? And did they just make it up, kind of like for the song?
It's kind of both. Like it's kind of made up and it's kind of real. When you can sort of like what age are they talking about? You know, like are they talking about the age of like where Pluto is? Are they talking about the age of where we are with the precession of the equinoxes? Because technically, from that perspective, we would actually be in the age of Pisces. It's, you know, it's not necessarily anchored by something astrological, but it is accurate in that currently we do have Pluto moving into Aquarius and or having just moved into Aquarius. And then broadly speaking, this sort of technology space, futuristic space does embody a lot of those Aquarian archetypes. So I wouldn't say it's inaccurate to say that we are in this very Aquarian age, right? Of futurism and technology and sort of mass media. All of that is Age of Aquarius. But I also think it was most importantly a very catchy song.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. Because like that was a question that came in, not from me in particular. Someone else wanted to know, do you have a writing ritual and what that looks like?
That's a really good question. For now, I mean, I guess I have a writing ritual as of right now because I'm not writing a book. When I write a book, I should probably have more writing rituals. I mean, writing a book is like the most chaotic, exhausting, intense experience. And each time I get wrapped up in another book, it's kind of like pregnancy. I like forget how intense and horrible it is. And I'm like, I could do it again. And then I'm doing it. I'm like, why did I sign up for this? It sucks. I hate writing a book. It's so hard. But I also have a Substack that I write every week. And Sunday is my Substack writing day. After my daughter goes to sleep, Sunday evenings, I get cozy somewhere with my computer and I look at all the transits that are coming up in the week ahead, and I write, as much as what, and experience sort of incorporating the current events, what's going on in my life, looking at the transits, interpreting them, predicting around them. So that is now my current writing ritual is a Sunday night writing ritual.
And that sounds cozy.
It is cozy.
Yeah. Okay. And then was curious to like people who are new. A lot of people that find me on TikTok are beginner witches, or they consider themselves to be witchy, right? And so we get a lot of questions like all the time about where to begin on anything. So I would definitely recommend this is a good beginner friendly book for people, because then they're going to be able to like tune into the magic every day, which is why I think it got picked. Like I put it to vote, but our coven voted for it because they liked the idea of every day can be magical. And we like the idea that we can use some of these as like journal prompts. We can use them as affirmations, as meditations. Like the book, there's a lot of layers to your book. And so that's definitely one way, right, for a good beginner tip. But do you have some other good, like, what are some beginner tips for like astrology or for more magical life?
So for astrology, my beginner tip is to first calculate your accurate birth chart. In other words, no co-star shit, no grid. We hate it. We want to see a nice circular wheel. And even if it looks like hieroglyphics to you, just render it, get that circle chart up there, and see what you're interested in. See what stands out to you. Are you interested in the fact that a lot of symbols are occupying one area? Are you interested in noticing where the moon is in your chart? Are you interested in what's going on over here, or the colors? Whatever is striking your interest is striking it for a reason, so follow that thread. When it comes to astrology, you do not need to learn everything all at once. You don't need to become an expert overnight. I did not become an expert overnight. I studied for 5 years before I started to really be out here talking about astrology. And actually, that's not even true. It was 7 years before I started my social media around astrology. So definitely take your time and explore your threads of interest. And then, in general, for cultivating a magical practice or tapping into your intuition or living a witchy life, I would say just sort of like whatever the instincts that you have are, amplify them, and it could be aesthetic, it could be in terms of like how you want to create your space. It doesn't need to be like wherever you're coming into that interest or that intrigue, give yourself permission to actually step into it fully and not try to be 4 or 5 steps ahead of where you are, but really like amplify what is interesting you, because it's interesting you for a reason. And that curiosity is going to always be your thread throughout your magical practice.
That I have never heard anybody say that about astrology before. Like I've never when you read beginner books or you look at other people's podcasts or blogs or whatever, it's never like follow your intuition, which I think makes the most sense for people, because you're right, we can't learn it all, especially if this is, not their career, right? This is just like I want to know enough to understand. It's like I always talk about with beginner witches, like your practice is a lifelong journey. Like maybe
Yes.
by the time I'm in my 80s, I'll finally get astrology, like I'll finally understand it, right? And because for me, like the more I learn about astrology, the less I feel I know. But that's just like personal. But it's like I love that. I love that you're encouraging people to look at the chart. And also, thank you so much for saying that about CoStar. When we talk about like astrology resources in our coven and people bring up CoStar, I'm always like, oh, let's try a different thing, like because it's so manipulative.
Yeah, we hate CoStar. I'm like one podcast away from getting a cease and desist letter, I think, from them, frankly, with the amount of shade that I throw. But like it's just, it's VC backed. Its entire function is trying to get people to open the app up and return. It doesn't have, it's not really rooted in integrity. And the grid, frankly, from an astrological perspective, that table they present, is like, but is bogus, like an astrologer cannot work with that table. So sometimes people will be like, can you look at this for me? And I'm like, no, I can't. This is mumbo jumbo. Please, like, give me a proper chart and then we can talk.
Yeah, and so for people that don't know, Time Passages has a free version of their app, and it'll give you the chart that you can have on your phone, and it's the circle that she is referencing, and it will make a lot more sense, and it's free, and it's not manipulating you to like feel bad about yourself and insecure about all your relationships and keep coming back. So,
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
okay, so do you consider yourself a witch? Is that like a label you would use, or what? I noticed you use the term like mystic, right? In here in the book, I think you said like mystical.
Yeah, I'm mystical and I'm a witch. Yeah, I am all of it. I am a mystic, I am a spiritualist, I am a witch, I am an astrologer, I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, I'm a friend. I'm all of it, but I am definitely 100% a witch and have always been a witch. And it's one of the clearest parts of my identity, in fact. I've I think that I've only ever doubted it when I have felt insecure and like I have let societal pressures make me feel like there was something to be embarrassed about around it. But if I've always, if I am always true with who I know I have been, I have always been a witch.
And so when did you kind of come to that conclusion? Like for me, I was 10 years old and I was doing my CCD Catholic classes and my cat passed away and my teacher told me he wasn't going to heaven because animals didn't have souls. And then at 10 years old, I had an existential crisis. I was like, wait a minute, you're wrong. So obviously this whole thing is wrong. And I went on this whole journey and I was 13 in middle school, and a friend's like, always talking religion, always talking spirituality with people because I was weird. And this friend's like, yeah, I'm a witch. I'm like, wait a minute, that's real? And she's like, yeah, it's real. Like, stop, tell me more. And then I never looked back. So I was like 13 years old. I was like, give me that Scott Cunningham book. And I'm getting on that broomstick and I'm never looking back because it just like finally clicked. I'm like, oh, this is what I was always supposed to be doing. So I'm just curious, like, what was your kind of like moment where you're like, yes, this is it?
I don't know if I wish I had like a distinctive moment like that. For me, it was, I mean, all of my memories from being a kid, the ones that stand out to me are memories where I feel very, very magical. I have a memory of a mirror in my apartment growing up that I would just stare into and have this really like and it was scrying. I was doing mirror magic without knowing I was doing mirror magic. But I would just say the things that I wanted to create, and I was just very connected to my power and the ability to manifest and work with energy that was greater than just like my little body, my little baby body. Um, I have those memories. I also, for any astrology people out here listening I'm an eighth house stellium. I have my sun conjunct my south node in my eighth house, Mercury in my eighth house, Venus in my eighth house, Mars in my eighth house, Juno in my eighth house. I also have a lot of 12th house planets. So like I've always been a very witchy person. Like I was the kid who was like, I only want to come to the sleepover if we're going to do Ouija. I only want to do light as a feather, stiff as a board. I only want to tell horror stories and talk. I only want to assume your house is haunted. If you tell me your house is not haunted, boo, what a waste of time. So like I've always been on that frequency and interested in the occult, interested in strange and unusual. Like that has always been who I am and what lights me up. And then, I tried to be normal for a few years. And in that normalcy, I was miserable, miserable. And when I say normal, I really mean making myself palatable for men. Um, and in that time, had my own existential crisis in my early 20s, which was also a spiritual awakening, which is when all of this came through, the astrology, the intuition, the magic. And it was at that time where I was like, duh, Aliza, like you've always been this is who you are. You're desperately trying to figure out who you are. This is who you are. This is who you've always been. Put the pieces back together. So yeah, that's sort of how it all coalesced.
I love that. I taught my daughter light as a feather, stiff as a board before her slumber party. I was like, this is
I love
quintessential.
it. Good. That's
Like,
those are the parties.
yeah, like, and she was like, "Are you for real?" I'm like, "For real." And the girls, I swear, would be lifted up. Like, I have distinct memories of these girls being off the floor, and like we weren't doing drugs, so like it was there, it was
Something was
real.
happening.
Yeah, it was
Totally.
totally happening. So I love that. And so that's is that kind of like how come it's all magic is because you really do kind of embody magic as like a daily practice for yourself, and you've kind of always done that. It seems like intuitively.
Yes. Yeah. I think that it is all magic. Everything is magic.
Yeah. And what would you say is the magic of being a parent so
Hmm.
far?
Well, my daughter, we just celebrated her 1 year birthday. So um, this is still all very new to me. But so far, I would say that it's really magic in perspective. It's magic in the seasons. It's magic in selflessness. Um, it's magic in the little things. It's such an act of being present, parenthood, and embodiment. Embodying in the moment, and it's been a really beautiful extension of a lot of the spiritual work that I was hoping to do. Aspiring to do. It's like, how do I really be here right now? And appreciate exactly what is in front of me. And right now, I'm still, the transition, because Tallulah, my daughter, is now like transitioning from baby to toddler. And this transition, as I'm watching her, is like in her baby newborn phase, it was very reflective. And now it's very active. What are we doing? Where are we going? We got to get out of the house. Like, and all of that is, it's these transitions of seasons and different types of portals. And it's really just beautiful to be on the journey.
And if you have time, I'd like to ask you just one last question.
Sure.
Okay, so since you are a witch but also an astrologer, you just brought up seasons. Curious because we have like the witch's wheel that some people celebrate, that the solstice and that kind of energy. We also have the full moon and the new moon energy, but then we have like all the astrology seasons, right? So it's kind of like I find a lot of witches, new people are like, this is really overwhelming. There seems to be like something going on every day. Like there's so many and like so much energy I can tune into. So just curious, like any advice for people that are like wanting to maybe work with the moons, but also interested in seasons, but also interested in like what it means to be in Sagittarius season. How can they navigate that?
Well, I mean, what I always say is that I'll take any portal I'm presented with. Give me a portal and I'm there. Like I will not discriminate from one portal to the next. If we're talking about a solstice, or if it's a new moon, or if it's a Gregorian calendar year, or if it's an equinox, give it to me. I will take it all. Similarly, take what resonates with you and don't worry about the rest. And that might be, on in 1 month, you might decide that you really want to tune into a new astrological season, but you're not as interested in working with the moon. Or maybe you want to tune into an equinox or a solstice or another one of the holidays on the witch wheel, and you're going to deprioritize the Gregorian calendar year or whatever it is. Like, figure out what you just always, with all things, move where you're curious, because that's where all the answers are.
I love that. That's beautiful. Do you have anything else you'd want to share before we sign off? And
I
anything
guess
else?
the last thing I have to share is that, in addition to my book, which just came out very recently, I also have a podcast called Horoscope Weekly, which comes out every Monday, and it's horoscopes for every single zodiac sign each week. So for those who are interested, I think that that's a cool thing to incorporate into a Monday ritual. And then, yeah, I'm everywhere on the internet. I try not to be chronically online, but yet I am. So you can find me everywhere.
Yeah. Well, I thank you. This has been like an amazing kind of thing for myself, just on a, like, I'm going to end it on like a self-centered note. But I was manifesting for next year to do like lives and more chats because I genuinely really like talking to people. I think it's the Gemini moon, but I also was an English teacher for many years. So I was the teacher everybody came out to. I was the teacher everybody like told their problems to. So I really love talking with people. And a publicist from Hay House was like, yeah, I think Aliza would do a live with you. And I was like, shut up. Like her. Like, why? Why would she do one with me? Like, I was so,
Jenny, you're amazing. You are amazing. I love all of the work that you're doing. I think that you're doing amazing, amazing work. And I love the way that you speak about our coven. I think it's so beautiful. I I really like the offerings that you have in that container are incredible. And I think that you're doing such an amazing your presence here is so important. So it's an honor to talk to you.
well, I appreciate that. I was not fishing when I said that, but no, I was truly amazed because it's like, and then I kind of started thinking, I'm like, maybe other people actually want to talk to me. And then I started just kind of asking other authors. And like, so pretty much like you came in early. It was like, this was the sign I needed that, yes, absolutely, you can do this next year. And like, you can talk to people. And like, we had tech issues, but it worked out. And so it's just another example of like manifesting. I always manifest, I put it out there, and then I usually burn what I manifest. And I'm always like, because I trust that whatever's going to come in is going to come in, it's going to be better. And it's not going to always be on my time. And like, this is early, right? This conversation, I'm like, this was a goal for next year. But it came in, I was like, yes, like, let's, like you said, I constantly saying yes to different little career things and nudges. It's like, yes, I want to try that. Yes, I want to talk to that person. Yes, I want that card back. Like, it's been, it's just how it's how it works, right? And I think that's
Yeah,
like
for sure.
that's the magic. That's the magic that you're talking about in this book, that we've been talking about in this interview. Is the magic is you're a little bit of you and a little bit of trust and a little bit of outside source, and then in the end, that's where the magic comes from. So
Totally. Totally, totally.
yeah, so
I'm
I thank
so
you so much.
grateful to be connected to you.
Yeah, and we're all looking forward to reading your book together and talking about it. I like skimmed it, but I am being really good about not starting it till January 1st. I was like,
Cool. I love that. That's awesome.
yeah, because I got very excited because like you talked about, so many of the day books are Christian, and so when this came out, it was like, oh my gosh, like it's a day book for the rest of us. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
so like there's nothing else like it out there. It's like everything else you read, it's like you take it with a grain of salt. Like, oh yeah, I really liked that, except for that little overtone of the patriarchy. But this, none of that. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
Yeah, and I will.
Your questions are so thoughtful and you're just doing an amazing job. And I'm excited to see what you do and the conversations you have in 2025 and all of the magic that you make.
Thank you. Yeah, and people can find you. I'll link everything when I put this up on YouTube. And for now, definitely go over her TikTok, find all her information. There isn't a thing she doesn't do, right? If you want a card deck, she's got it. You want a book, she's got it. You want like classes, she's got it. It's like check, 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 check. And the podcast is great. I've been listening to it, and it's been helpful. Like, I love to start my Monday off with podcasts anyway. So it's like while I'm mopping or whatever, I'm like, okay, let's get the astrology and like kind of, and then I tell my husband, I'm like, this is what you need to know for the week.
Cool. I love it.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Conversation. Like, this is what everybody needs to know. Be careful of this. And so yeah, so thank you for all the work you do. Thank you for your offering to everybody, and highly recommend this book.
Thank you. I
Thank
really
you, everybody,
appreciate
for being
it. This
here.
was so lovely.
Yeah,
Bye,
thank you so much.
everybody.
For your time. Bye.
Bye.